We know that in written music, called notation, the musical staff, lines and spaces, represent a given sound. The notes that are placed on those lines and spaces are about time, measured in beats. Learn to recognize musical notes. Know what kind of note it is and what its value is. You can already do math, and that's all this is. You just have to teach your brain to look at a note and think of it as a number. Then you do the math. Some screens are best viewed in full screen mode. Use the play/pause button for extended viewing of a screen. Use the mute button to stop my narration. The audio play/mute button looks like an icon of a speaker. A whole note gets 4 beats, or the whole of a 4-beat measure. A half note gets 2 beats, or half of the 4-beat measure. A quarter note gets 1 beat, or 1/4 of the 4-beat measure. An eighth note gets half of a beat, or 1/8 of a 4-beat measure. A 16th note gets 1/4 of a beat, or 1/16 of the 4-beat measure. A 32nd note gets 1/8 of a beat, or 1/32 of a 4-beat measure. Here you see a whole note worth 4 beats. At the bottom of the page, I have drawn a pie chart for each of the 4 beats. The pie chart may seem a little large right now, but they won't when I start dividing them into parts of a beat. So, you would attack this note, that means start the sound on your instrument, and keep the sound coming for all of the 4 beats. This note has consumed the whole of a 4-beat measure. Now you see 2 half notes. Each half note receives 2 beats, making a total of 4 beats. It should be clear where each of the 4 beats belongs. This measure would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on, we have 4 quarter notes, each worth 1 beat. When I clap my hands, that simulates you attacking the note. This measure would be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. An eighth note only receives 1/2 of a beat. So now we begin to subdivide the beat. Another way of saying that would be that we are dealing with fractions of a beat. After you play the first note, there is still 1/2 of a beat left. For counting purposes, we call that second half of the beat and. When writing out counts, I use a plus sign to represent the word and. This measure is counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There are 4 16th notes in a beat. For counting purposes, those 4 parts of a beat get counted like this: 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. When you count rhythms, every measure except pickup notes starts with 1. Then everything else depends on what parts of counts have already been used and what parts of counts remain to be used. Here's a rhythm that consumes a full measure of 4 beats or counts. The terms beats and counts are interchangeable. The first note is a quarter note, which receives 1 full beat. So, all the parts of that beat have been marked as used. The second note is an eighth note. It receives 1/2 of a beat. That 1/2 has been marked as used, but 1/2 of beat 2 remains unused. So far the count goes like this: 1, 2. The next unused part of the beat is and, so that's the next thing that gets said. Now there are 2 eighth notes tied together into one sound, not 2. It gets counted and 3. You could count and a 3E, but there's no need to vocalize the ah and the e. Only vocalize what is needed. The more you practice counting, the easier this gets. From the top, we now have 1, 2, and 3. We see that the next unused syllable is and. Next we have an eighth note worth 1/2 beat. We know that the next unused syllable is and, so that's the next thing you say. The ah gets eaten up, so to speak, and there is no need to voice it. Can you do the counting? 1, 2, and 3, and. The last note in this rhythm is a quarter note worth 1 beat. This note uses all of the unused parts of beats in the 4-count measure. Now our count goes like this: 1, 2, and 3, and 4. That's it. We've counted the rhythm. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Continuing, you would move to the next measure and start with the number 1. Before I close this video, I want to mention dotted notes. Here is a musical rule you should memorize. A dot increases the value of a note by 1/2 of its original value. Looking at measures 1 and 2 of this sample, we see a dotted half note. The half note is worth 2 counts, and the dot increases the value by 1/2 of 2, leaving us with a note worth 3 beats. In measure 3 we see a dotted quarter note. A quarter note is worth 1 count. The dot increases the value by 1/2 of the original value, so a dotted quarter note is worth 1.5 beats or counts. P.S. Once you have a grasp of counting, including 16th notes, it becomes relatively easy to teach yourself how to play the drum set. More on that later. Okay, that's all. For now, I'm signing off. Remember, music makes life more enjoyable.